Yeah, inside video. Big storm outside. Wouldn't be good at all for video making. Right, this is machinecode3. Just received a video reply from Gary to machinecode2, but I haven't watched it yet because I didn't want to be put off the thinks that I've got a thinking here now. So I'll watch it when I've just done. So, going to kind of move gears, but not move place. I'm still not totally entering Basecamp 2, but I'm going to try and do a bit of a description of happenings in Basecamp 2. Now, this is going to stretch things because it goes beyond scientific knowledge, I think, quite frankly. I'll do what my knowledge of neuroscience and all that will be as good as I can do, but much of it can be considered just Nick making it up as he goes along. But the idea is to make some sort of a coherent picture that might link between Basecamp 1 and Basecamp 2, because we get things like I've got this idea going of the manuals, the guides for Basecamp 1 and Basecamp 2. Now, if we say the word meaning or something like that, it doesn't appear in Basecamp 1 at all, manual, guide. It just, you look in the index, not there. So a Basecamp 1 person would just ask Basecamp 2, well, what's this meaning stuff? And you can look it up in the guide for Basecamp 2, and it's all over the place. I mean, modern dictionary, electronic, goes on for thousands of pages. But the basic idea is that it's an idea. Meaning is an idea. So we go from our Basecamp 1, look up idea, and we go, no, we haven't got one of them. What's this idea stuff? And again, look in the manual for Basecamp 2, and it goes on for thousands of pages of description what an idea is. An idea is, if we're going to break it down even more, might be, say, that are based on sentences, phrases, words. So the basic one is words, and we look over at Basecamp 1 and go, words, nah, don't have any of them. No word, no understanding. So I thought I'd go to try have a stab at word today as an entry into Basecamp 2 and show the difference that even word doesn't exist in Basecamp 1. So what is a word that can make a phrase, a sentence, an idea, a meaning? Life for human beings, life in general, flows like a river, always flowing like a river. And if you ever want to have a look at it, you've got to take a slice through the river and have a look in there to see what's going on. Now, whatever is there that you're looking at through the slice of the river, all you can say for sure is, when you go zoom back out again, leave the slice there and look up the river that way, or down the river that way, is you know that whatever you're looking at in the slice has been caused by all the past running of the river. The way the river's running has caused whatever you find in that slice. Nothing in that slice has just happened spontaneously. It's just caused by the entire rushing of the river. Okay, what am I talking about? Oh yeah, because I was going to cut into a person's life at an early stage, child human stage. And so you've got to cut in knowing that the child already is something and knows something. Now, is and knows are both Basecamp 2 phrases, words that don't exist in Basecamp 1. but we've got the idea. We're slicing into child that's already had some development. And we're at the stage where it's learning what an apple is. Parent is showing child apple and saying apple, apple. And the baby child thing is going, and eventually it'll, by accident, let's say apple. And the parent goes, apple, apple, apple. Now, I've got one concept I can introduce here, might as well introduce it here. But, no, I'll come to it slower. So what we've got, based on what I talked about in the last couple of boring videos, the parent is using voice to vibrate the airwaves into the child's ear hole, machine code, vibrating the ear hole, machine code going up to the brain, the cogitation box, and arriving as a pattern in the brain. The child, through sight, is seeing apple, which is going to the child's eye and up to the child's brain as machine code, and making a pattern in the child's brain. And what I'm going to say is, now I was thinking about this beforehand. This is one of the things I didn't want knocked out by watching Gary's video, was I couldn't decide whether to say that the child was holding, or the child's brain was holding, the sight of the apple and the vibrational machine code words of the apple at the same time or at different times. That's one thing I couldn't decide which to go for. And I'm going to go for, they're not held at the same time, they're held at different times. Now, the little I know about neurobiology, neuroscience, either one could be possible. One is more likely, but just for explanatory value, I'm actually going to go for the brain holding one after the other. So it has apple, sight, held as a pattern in the brain, and then it's apple, machine code vibration of the words apple, and then there's machine code representation of it itself saying apple. It goes sight apple, parent's apple, baby's apple, one after the other, and then the excitement of the parent going, woo, baby done good. Should I go straight into another concept now? Yeah, I will. Okay, based on Gary's idea, I'm going to have, okay, yeah, how should I say this? The child is always having bodily inputs coming in from everywhere. All these everywhere machine inputs coming up to the brainium are making for the body to move of the child for various reasons. It might be its knee still hurts from earlier when it fell over. It's seeing things, hearing things, smelling things, etc. All this machine code's coming in, and all of it has basically got information saying move here, move there, move here, move there, move there, move there, move there, move there, and all that sort of stuff. What I'm going to put forward as an idea is, and again, I don't think there's any basis for this, but I don't think it's wildly implausible, that by the parents, the joy is, we know in real life, transmitted to the child somehow. I think what might happen, or could happen, would be that information coming through the visual and the audio with the overwhelms all other move signals so much that the child goes into a feeling of total comfort, because it's not, I'll overdo it just to make the point. For the first time in its life, it's not being buffeted by information in the brainium to move here, there and everywhere and do all sorts of stuff. It has a moment of calm. Now it liked this moment of calm. You see what I've done to make where you learn something and it's pressed home by something good, reassurance, anyway, you'll know the word. So now we've got the brainium of the child going in stages, going down the river, but stages are sees apple, hears parents say apple, says apple itself, sees parents joy, whole body goes with a great feeling of I don't have to move, and it's almost got the word then, but it's established now that this is what happens, and we could say that the feeling of joy, which is the non-movement thing, will drag that series out whenever it comes again. God, I've done a bit of work just getting to there. It's going to make the rest of it very difficult if I'm going to keep it together. I'm not going to be able to get to where I wanted to go. So again, this is going to be another video that doesn't go anywhere. It's just a stepping stone. I'll just go to thought next, because I left it out in the series. Sight of apple, hearing parents saying apple, and baby saying apple. Before that, we've got to deal with the idea of thought of apple for the child, because that's where we're going to get to with thoughts and meanings and words and phrases, meanings, concepts and all that sort of stuff. I think what we can presume, this is why I've gone for the one after the other as opposed to the brainium holding them at the same time, that the child, this is hard to understand and I might have to do this 1,000 times to get it out there, but I think there's some validity to it. When the child is seeing the apple, the child is, all the other inputs about its knee and all other things have gone calm, but they're still there. The child is that apple. It is basically, the brainium is absolutely covered in apple. It is apple. You can't, you know, you can tap the child on the head and say that's its head and that's still its knee. But to the mental state of the child is apple, absolutely apple. And then when the sound of the parent saying apple comes in, machine code comes in and swells all over the brain and goes, apple. The child is apple again. It says apple, hears itself say apple, it's still all apple. The baby, the child is apple. Now it gets to a stage down the road where it can have the idea apple, the baby then is all apple again, and that is an idea. An idea is purely the child and later the human being apple. That's it's a concept that comes from other places, but I think it does become valid as an understanding tool of what goes on. And when the apple's gone away and the parent, the vision of the parent being joyful and the sounds have gone away, the feeling of non-action, joy, is what the child is. It is joy. Now, in next video or later videos, I think we'll find that it's essential, although it sounds totally wacky, this the child is the apple, or the child is the joy, or the brainium is the joy, is the child. becomes very important, because it, for one thing, it gets round the idea that the child is saying something, the child is thinking something. When the child, you or I, am saying something, we are overwhelmingly it. That is what we overwhelmingly are for a minute fraction of a second before we go on to being overwhelmingly something else. So we've got a couple of concepts introduced here. That, the being something, which I think is very important, and the idea that normal life, all these machine code inputs coming from the senses into the brainium, are all scrabbling in a huge war to get the brainium to do something. And joy is relief from that scrabbling into something else that takes over the brainium, and the child is something else that isn't just the war scrabbling for something else. But I appreciate this video is a bit tricky to understand, like the other ones have been. Tricky stroke boring, and doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. But I think this is why, because nobody really ever gets anywhere on this, because it is so difficult stroke boring. So I'll just push on, and the fewer and fewer people will listen, but we might or might not get somewhere, because quite frankly, reading the guidebook manual for Basecamp 2, the people of Basecamp 2 really haven't got very far at all. Ask them what meaning is and they'll tell you all sorts of nonsense. Ask them what an idea is, they'll tell you all sorts of nonsense. Pin them really down and they'll say, I don't know. And that I don't know is pretty prevalent right across the board. So in fact, it's everywhere. Nobody knows, you could even say, in normal language. So when we're dealing with nobody knows, it's a bit tricky. So slowly, slowly, catch your monkey. Bye.